everyone to another Sales Hacker webinar. Thank you for lending us your eardrums and your eyeballs for the next hour or so. I'm super excited to be joined here today by two sales leaders that collectively have more than 40 years of selling experience. So as a total sales and marketing nerd myself, I'm very excited to spend this time with these two gentlemen. And what we're going to be diving into is the topic is 5 signs your deal is dead. And more importantly, what can you do about it when you realize that it's dead? And before I introduce my awesome guests, really quickly, just some housekeeping matters. Number one, we definitely want you to get involved, right? Every time that we do this, it's for the community. So jump on, there's a little Q&A section at the bottom there. Let us know your name, title, where you're from, and any relevant questions that you have. We'll try and field those. And just quickly, Kevin, Jake, are you hearing a little bit of feedback?
A little bit, yeah.
Right? There's kind of a little nagging there. Can we just make sure? Let's see. Marcel,
I don't hear any.
You don't?
I don't hear any on my side.
Okay. Let's see if it. Okay. I think it's gone. Yes, it is. I think we're good. All right. Kevin, can you still hear it? I think I'm good on my end.
I'm fine.
Okay, cool.
I can hear you.
All right. Live webinars. Here we go. Okay, the second matter of housekeeping is these are all recorded. So we will send this to you in about 24 hours. I always get some emails of people asking, hey, when am I going to get it? Don't worry, it's going to be in your inbox. So those are the two housekeepings. We got that out of the way. I want to introduce my awesome guests. Jake, I'm going to start with you. We are joined by Jake Mars, VP of Sales at Alteryx, which is a data analytics company. So Jake, welcome to the webinar, man.
Thank you. Really glad to be here.
We're excited to have you. And just for a little bit more color, so you've held various sales roles, anywhere from account executive to frontline manager to, obviously a VP at company like Cognos, Kronos, and SAP, so some big companies. And today, obviously, you're managing the North American team at Alteryx. What's something, fun that people might not know about you, not on LinkedIn?
Oh, there's all kinds of things. Kevin knows too many of those details. I guess maybe I'll say, what do I like to do outside of selling and driving a North America business is, I'm an absolutely beach guy. If I'm not out working, if I'm not spending time with my family, I'm sitting on the beach or in the water, really trying to enjoy myself.
I love it. I love it. And then, of course, we have Kevin. And Kevin, I should have asked this before we jumped on a live webinar. How do I pronounce your last name? Knieriem?
Yeah, it's a tough
Knieriem?
one. You gotta ask my daughters, but last name is Knieriem.
Knieriem. All right. Kevin Knieriem, who is the CRO at Clari. And Kevin, you also grew up in sales. And most recently, before Clari, led data science from pre-revenue to the acquisition by Oracle. And the cool thing is, as we were kind of prepping for this, you and Jake actually worked together in a past life. Is that correct?
We did. We've shared a lot of fun experiences.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So between the two of you, we're definitely in good hands to tackle this. And it is a really, really important topic in sales is, when do we know that a deal is tracking well? Or in more dramatic terms, when do we know when it's dead? And what can we do about it? So I know you two have seen it all. You've worked on many deals together. You've worked on both as executives, frontline managers, heads of sales. So a good place to start before even, talking about the signal to watch for is why, and I'll start with you, Kevin, why is understanding when your deal is dead so important to begin with? Why are we even talking about this today?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have only so much energy and your organization has only so many calories that they can apply against opportunities. And so it's super important to understand when it's time to move on or when it's time to double down and get the deal done. And you know, as someone who was a former sales rep, right, a shotgun approach doesn't work. Investing too much in an opportunity that's going the wrong direction doesn't work. And I think as a sales individual, as a sales manager, as a sales leader, it's all of our jobs to put the resources of our company and align them to the best potential outcomes.
Yeah, yeah. Couldn't agree more. Jake, anything to add on top of that? Why is this topic so important for both individual contributors and anyone leading sales today?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I like what Kevin said, but, you know, time is the most precious commodity any seller has. You know, as you mentioned, you know, I was an account executive actually for 15 years or 14, 15 years, and you can only do so much. You can only chase so many deals, and I always look at it is, it's just as important to determine what deals should you be in as well as what deals shouldn't you be in. And so I am constantly coaching, my sales leaders and having them coach their AEs and say, hey, let's just make sure we're chasing the right deals, because we could go in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of different companies out of there, and the last thing you want to do is, chase the wrong things and waste a bunch of time. Again, time is your most precious thing, and you want to make sure you're as productive as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just as we go, because I'm still hearing a little bit of feedback here and there, if you don't mind, Kevin and Jake, when you're not speaking, you mind putting yourself on mute? That may help the situation, hopefully. Okay, so we've kind of set the stage of why we're talking about this. Now I want to quickly just run through kind of an agenda. Like, what are the few key leading indicators that we're going to be running through as we go through this? And Jake, do you want to just quickly run through these five that we're going to kind of outline today? And I think you're still on mute.
Yeah.
There, Jake. There we go.
I'm going to have to remember that. Perfect. Yeah, so first and foremost, why do you inspect your deals? Or, I generally use the term, and all my sales leaders hear it is, why do you pressure test a deal? Number one is, like I outlined before, is you don't want to waste your time. Time is the most precious commodity. You want to be making sure you're chasing the right deals, not the wrong deals, and you're not spending time on some person's unfunded science experiment that's going to get you nowhere, right? Again, you're hired for a reason, which is to ultimately drive revenue. Two is removing the blind spots. Most people, AEs and even frontline leaders will get heads down on execution, and they're just so focused on going from A to B to C and really progressing the deal, is sometimes they don't pull themselves back and really look at the big picture and realize, hey, I am just completely missing something, and that's commonly known as a blind spot. And sometimes it just takes a different perspective or someone else to come in and look at it and identify what that blind spot is. Two is, happy years. It happens to the best of us. I've seen the most seasoned account executives in the world have happy years about a deal. It's happened to me, even though I've been doing this for a long time. It just sometimes you want to believe the good, and it's really good to have someone come in, inspect your deal, pressure test your deal, and really say, hey, something, is this real, or am I only hearing what I want to hear? Again, it's that different perspective that is incredibly helpful. As an AE, as a frontline leader, as an executive running a North American business, is I always ask people for their perspective, because sometimes you need it. It improves forecasting. Forecasting is mission critical for any, organization, especially a high growth software company where, you're making very significant investment decisions on a quarterly basis, and you're doing that based on the forecast. So really getting in, inspecting your deal, pressure testing your deal is going to make sure that you're articulating, what your forecast is. So, the organization, can make really good decisions. And then lastly, course correcting. You can't fix a deal or set a deal on a better path if you really haven't identified what the challenges are and what those blind spots are. So, the first thing is, hey, do we have a problem? Yes, we do have a problem. Okay, now let's go to plan B, plan C, or plan D to go fix that problem and get it back into a better direction. I've had many times, as an AE and a leader, I've watched a deal, and it is going down a certain path, and it would be a path to failure. And if we didn't have a conversation, and if we didn't pressure test it, we wouldn't have been able to course correct, and we probably would have burned, another month or two and ended up with a competitive loss. So again, it allows you to diagnose and ultimately course correct.
Absolutely. And I can say myself, I took a lot of heat in my younger years of selling this happy years. And it's something that it's very difficult to break out of. Even when you think you've got it, it will get you. So excited to dive into that one. All right, let's start with number one. So the number one, reason that we see that, your deal may be dead is this one. And it may seem a little obvious at the get-go, but this is not enough sales activity and follow-up. So chances are, if there's no sales activity, your organization is not top of mind for your prospect. And equally, if you have the wrong activity, it's not a good thing either. So Kevin, I want to start with you here. What are you looking for in sales activity on active deals? What's indicating good activity, healthy activity, and what's a red flag for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, activity equals engagement, right? How are reps engaging with their customer? Is the customer responding to emails, phone calls, documents? Are they responding to what's happening upstream from content in outbound marketing? Are meetings being calendared, right? Reps always say, I've got a meeting scheduled. Is it calendared? Do we know who it's with? What is indicating good activity and what's a red flag? Is the level of engagement good? Is it with the wrong people? Are we wasting time? And so all of those signals, if you will, are super important as you work with your rep or as a rep in understanding where you are in an opportunity. And so thinking about activity, right? There's good activity and there's bad activity and there's activity that's wasted time. So how do you figure out what is good versus what is bad? In the old world, this was kind of hard to do, right? In the old world where you just had an email and a phone call and most meetings happened face-to-face, you were relying on a lot of storytelling from your rep and rep to manager, et cetera. In the modern world, we use a lot of systems of record and systems of engagement to talk to and engage with our customers at all parts of the funnel, from top of funnel to middle of funnel to bottom of funnel. And it's the ability of a good rep, a good manager, a good leader to understand all of that signal and how it applies against the opportunity and to make decisions on, are we moving in the right direction? Are we moving in the wrong direction? I'm fortunate to get to use Clari to allow me to do this. A lot of folks use different tools as they try to understand the level of engagement. Again, to me, activity equals engagement in your accounts.
Yeah, makes total sense. We've definitely come a long way thanks to sales technology on giving us just that increased transparency and visibility across the org. So Jake, I'll ask a similar question to you. When you're going in and you have to inspect the deals, you're looking to do it quickly, you want to get a quick snapshot. How do you inspect deals for sales activity, and what amount of activity are you looking for? Like, what's a healthy sequence cadence of activity that you see as kind of a benchmark? And I think you may be on mute again.
So one thing is, sales activity is incredibly important, right? But you also want to make sure that, to Kevin's point, is you have the right activity. And, I've seen many reps that are highly active, but their pipeline isn't growing and they aren't closing deals. So you really want to measure, what are those right activities. Here at Alteryx, we have a very defined playbook, and we understand typically what are the steps, right, from a prospecting standpoint, to initially engaging with a customer, to doing a trial with them, or a guided trial, to ultimately leading to a purchase. And so we really define what are the typical activities that are done to lead up to an actual purchase of our software, whether it's a net new logo or it's an expansion of an existing customer. So again, we have a very defined process. We follow a land and expand model, and our playbook is pretty well baked. How to identify, are the reps actually doing it? Well, it's pretty simple. I look at, I have my managers first, talk through every single deal. I look at what they're logging in Salesforce. But even more importantly, one of the things that I use on a regular basis is Clari. I could actually look at every individual opportunity and see, hey, is a rep active in this account? And it actually pulls directly from their calendar what activities they are doing. And we can identify, hey, is it a discovery? Is it a demo? Is it a guided trial? And we map that to our playbook and say, hey, are these the activities, right, that ultimately, will drive to a transaction, right? So again, are they following the prescriptive playbook that typically leads to a deal? And we leverage technologies like Clari to actually measure that.
That's great. Yeah, and we'll dive into more of what that playbook looks like in the follow-up here, because I think there's a difference between activity and engagement, right? Activity is one thing, engagement is another. And Kevin, I want to go to you now with what do you do? Let's say you look at your team, you look through your CRM, you look through Clari, and there is just not enough rep activity. Is that a motivation issue? How do you think about tackling that issue when you see no rep activity?
Yeah, that's obviously the first thing you look at as you're understanding, is the rep doing the right things in their business? And quite honestly, if I'm a rep, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right things in the business and I'm engaging with our customers in the most effective way. So I'll look at, right, so every rep, no matter what company you work for, has to prospect into their install base, has to prospect into their net new, but also has to move their existing opportunities forward. So I look at all of those and the different means that they're touching those customers with, right? The level of email engagement. I think here's what's really interesting. It's not just that they're sending emails, but are those emails being opened? Are they being read? Are they drafting them in such a way that they're going to get someone's attention? When they're making phone calls, are they getting someone on the line? Is that phone call productive, or are they just leaving voicemail messages? As they're leveraging their SDR team to divide and conquer into the install base, is the heat map, meaning the heat map of prospects, of line of business leaders in each of those prospects or accounts, are they getting to know them? Are they having conversations with them? Are those conversations moving the needle forward? And so a big part of activity for me is making sure that it's hitting the personas, the line of business leaders that are going to help unlock the opportunity, especially at Clari. And so it's a mix of how we're touching the customer, and is the customer engaging back with us? And are we moving forward on a week-over-week basis?
Yeah, makes total sense. And Jake, I'll flip the same question back to you. What do you do when you see no rep activity? What's the playbook there?
So sorry, repeat the question again.
So what do you typically do when you see no rep activity? So same question back at you. What's your immediate play there?
Yeah, I mean, if I see a rep, without activity, usually that is more of a one-on-one conversation to understand, okay, what's the why behind this? Are you running your cadences from a prospecting standpoint? Are you making your calls? Are you doing your emails? And are you not logging them? Or frankly, in the case of how we're set up, do you simply just not have things connected? But it's always the question of why, right? And a lot of times it comes back to is they might be following a little bit more of a traditional approach, and the message that they're trying to deliver isn't resonating with their audience. And so we'll work with that account executive to refine what that message is, to try and get an audience, try and find people that are more receptive to that message and want to ultimately engage with us. But it's typically a lot of just one-on-one dialogue with that individual contributor to determine the why, right? Why is it not working, or frankly, is it just an effort question?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And so the next one I want to move to is this idea of engagement. So there's activity in my mind, and then there's engagement. Whether that be with marketing collateral, whether that's email follow-up, as you mentioned, Kevin, what's the sentiment of that email? Is it positive? Is it negative? Meeting scheduled. And if you don't have that engagement piece, none of the activity is going to matter. So what do you typically look for? And Jake, I'll start with you. What do you look for in prospect engagement on deals? And is there such thing as too much engagement? Maybe I'm having too quick of a cadence or a sequence with these people, and maybe I'm coming across as too desperate, too annoying. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you don't want to cross the annoyance factor. You could it's a fine balance, because when you're prospecting, and if you have the same message over and over again, you very quickly become noise, and it just goes straight into the junk box, or they simply just start ignoring you. So too much engagement definitely is a bad thing. The right amount of engagement with the right message is absolutely critical if you want a customer to engage in a sales cycle with you and actually pick up the phone and talk with you. So definitely, you don't want to cross the point where you're annoying them or you just frankly just become noise.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I want to quickly go to the community. So we got some great engagement already, some great questions. And Kevin, this one's for you. It's an interesting question.
Sure.
Have you seen or used Clari as a justification for firing an underperforming sales rep? So let's say there's no activity, there's no engagement, it's right there, and you can see you have full visibility. Have you seen that as justification?
Obviously that's a good one, right? Clari does allow you to see level of engagement across all channels. Not just as a sales rep, but as the extended team who's engaged in that opportunity. So Clari is a very good gauge as you look at, okay, I've got a new rep. Are they onboarding at the same cadence and the same process as others that have been successful at your company, right? So I look at it from a new rep standpoint. Then I look at it as a rep who's fully ramped. Is their level of engagement the same as others within the organization? And what's really amazing is that I could stack rank everybody from a level of engagement, both from an individual standpoint and by an account standpoint. So yes, a leader could use this to help in a performance improvement process with a sales rep who maybe isn't as engaged for one reason or another. But I'll tell you what, my experience has been that when we've seen an engagement issue, it's been a really amazing opportunity for that manager and that rep to have a heart-to-heart really about what's working and what's not working. In some cases, that meant that we as an organization had to do a little bit more to help them from a prospecting and nurturing. In other cases, that rep just needed a personal kick in the butt. And I've seen this with good reps, and I've seen this with reps who are maturing in their career. So to answer your question, long-winded way, yes, the signal within Clari allows you to have healthy conversations with sales.
Yeah.
Jake, you want to have something to add there?
Yeah, one thing I was going to add, and I think Kevin hit on a great point that, sometimes the organization needs to help the rep out, as well, is we've all seen this is, hey, the pipeline's low, let's go yell at our reps and tell them to go put more pipeline in Salesforce, go build it up, et cetera. And, you push them long enough, they're going to start putting, fake pipeline in, so their multiples go up and they get off their back, right? And the most common mistake a lot of sales leaders make is they believe that they can control the outputs, right? The outputs are more pipeline. The outputs are more deals. What you want to do, and one thing we're really focused on here at Alteryx, is really driving what are the ingredients for success? What are the key inputs that a rep needs to do on a weekly and a monthly and a quarterly basis to actually build pipeline, to build a healthy pipeline that then allows them to execute, right? And if you focus on what those key inputs are, every organization is a little different. Like I said, we have a playbook, but we're always focusing on, okay, how do we tweak those inputs to continue to get the pipeline we want? So really focusing on that is mission critical. And frankly, though, that's also why you need to measure it, right? Because if you don't measure what the inputs you're doing, you can't really determine hey, are these the successful inputs that are driving the outputs that we need? So it's all about inputs and outputs. Don't try and control the outputs. You can only focus on and control what you can, which are the inputs. And those are the key activities that have been proven to be successful for your company. And if the reps follow that, and if the leaders reinforce that, you will be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of articulate it. It's not about creating this justification for firing an underperforming rep. It's just going to allow you to diagnose the problem and be more prescriptive with using your language than the inputs.
Yep, I've seen many underperforming reps turn around. I mean, frankly, I've had, over my career, I've had good quarters, I've had bad quarters. Early on in my career, I was that typical rep, right? That was up and down. Had a blowout quarter, and I stopped prospecting and stopped focusing on the inputs, and then the next quarter was really bad, right? Then I freaked out, started prospecting again, and had a good quarter, and continued to do that. It wasn't until I learned this concept of inputs and outputs as an individual contributor that I subsequently now have applied to as a leader. It wasn't until I did that is when I started having that sustained period of success of having very predictable quarters, on a regular basis.
Yeah. I love that. And it actually kind of naturally leads into our next question. And after I answer this question, I'm going to quickly hop off and hop back on because I'm still hearing this echo and I think I'm going to go insane if it goes on too much. So it naturally leads into it. So you talked about this up and down, right? This feast or famine kind of mentality that happens a lot in sales. You're closing all this business, then you got to go out and prospect. And for a lot of organizations, we combated this by creating the SDR function. But what I'm hearing time and time again, and it's one of the questions we have right now, is a lot of account executives are losing their ability to go out and hunt, or maybe losing the drive to go out and hunt. I'm sure they all still can. And we've got a great question from Nelson here. How do you disincentivize reps from relying on inbound or their SDR, BDR counterparts, and instead go out and hunt? So this would line up with the activity engagement that we're talking about. Any tips, tricks, plays that you run at Clari, Kevin, that make sure everyone is out there hunting consistently?
Yeah, I'd say, look,
as you answer this, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. So at Clari, think about it, right? We're a growth company. We've got a solution that is a game changer for salespeople and heads of sales. But we're very much still in an evangelistic world where our reps need to go out and get to those heads of sales and help them understand that there is a better way forward. And we do this through a lot of means, selling, et cetera. So all of our reps know that it's their responsibility to build their inbound, to create their own destiny, and the inside machine and the top of funnel machine at Clari is there to augment them. But all of our reps are incented and driven to prospect. They have prospecting hours that they work on every day. And as a leadership team, we work with them week over week to ensure that we're continuing to build funnel, put more opportunities into it. And when a rep is doing that, right, and I think Jake hit on this earlier, when you take your foot off the gas and you focus on the deal in front of you, you do that at the detriment of your out quarters. And so I tell this to every sales rep. This is advice I've given myself my entire career. It's also advice I've given to people that say, I want to be a sales rep, but don't really know what it means to be a sales rep is. Nothing happens unless you make it happen. So as a sales rep, and I'm speaking all the sales rep out there, it's up to you as individuals to make it happen. And then the additive comes from the machinery that your company's put in place to support you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you gotta. I was always told that you gotta own your line of business. You're an entrepreneur in that thing, and it is up to you to make it happen. And any inbound, like you said, any inbound or BDR help, that's a cherry on top. That's supplementing everything.
You want to reorient let me make a comment here.
Yeah.
And this was a big change that I had in my career, is I pivoted my mindset from running a territory to running a business. And what would I do if I was a general manager or the sole proprietor of this business? I sure would be getting on the phone. I would be making the calls. I would be sending the emails. I'd be on LinkedIn using all the tools that are available because I knew that was the only way I was going to get paid, and I didn't have a salary, right? And I knew I had to go make, payroll for all my other folks. And actually, I made this shift working for Kevin. I always treated, my business like it was a territory, right? It wasn't, Kevin had that GM mindset even, as an AE and as a first-time leader. And I'll tell all sellers, shift from thinking that you're running a territory to you're running a business. And what would you do if you were responsible and it was your money? You would get on the phone. An SDR or a business development here at Alteryx, we have a world-class SDR team. However, I tell my sellers that is a bonus, right? That is icing on the cake. You have to go make it happen yourself.
Yeah. I think that's definitely how you have to look at it to be successful in sales. And so I want to kind of flip that question on its head for the leaders out there, right? So you have, of course, you need to have your individual contributors running it like it's their own business, doing everything personally that they can do to fill that pipeline. But how, as a leader, how can you involve the entire go-to-market team to drive this engagement on deals? How can we get marketing involved? How can we get channel involved? How can we get the entire team behind that person to ensure that if they are running it like a GM, they're going to have success? And Jake, I'll go you on that one.
Sure. There's a saying that you never should die alone, right? A lone wolf will be successful here and there, but eventually, you're going to die and you're going to have no one to reach out to for help, right? And you're really only going to expose yourself. The most successful reps I've seen get everybody in the boat with them, have people looking at their deals, helping them. They have marketing reach out, doing account-based marketing. They have their pre-sales acting like sales, going to meetings on their own sometimes where it would make sense. They leverage their executives. They literally get everybody in the boat and have everybody touching your deal, because the sum of everybody is one of the most powerful things you can do if you can orchestrate it really well. So my guidance to everybody, especially ones that are early on in their career, don't try and do it on your own. Get everybody in the boat and you will be much more successful.
Absolutely. And I think a large part, if you're an individual contributor out there and you're having difficulty doing that and getting everyone in the boat, I think that's when you can lean on your sales leader, your VP, whoever it is. I think that's a large part of their job, is to help you be able to get those players that are needed in the boat.
Yeah, I'd also look at it as well as if you're an individual contributor and you've been in a company for a long time and no one's helping you, I would take that as an opportunity to reflect, right? As a seller, your job is also to sell internally. Why do people want to work for you, work on your deals, support your accounts? At SAP, when I was there, one of the things we really focused on is, what is your personal brand? And if you have a strong personal brand as someone that executes, the best of the best are going to come and work on your deals and want to work on your deals. If people don't want to help you out and you've been there for a while, I would take that as an opportunity to reflect and say, hey, do I need to do some internal selling and reorient it, maybe my personal brand?
That's a fantastic point. Yeah.
Yeah. And hey, Kevin, you might want to progress the slides.
Yeah. Let's move on to this one now. So we went through activity, we went through engagement. Let's go through now this idea of path to close. It's called many things: mutual action plan, mutual close plan, but having some pathway to success. Can we talk, let's set the stage of what is a path to close to begin with. And Kevin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so one of the things that we use at Clari is the concept of a sequence of events. What are the major steps that need to happen with your prospect or your customer that are going to lead to a signature? And this isn't one-sided, this is mutual. And so if you think about, you may call this actions to close. You may call this a joint execution plan. You may just call this a customer close plan. Whatever it is, understanding how you're going to do business with a customer is super key, right? And so if you don't understand how to do business with your customer and they haven't agreed that they are going to do business with you, you don't have a path to close. And so as a sales rep, one of your primary jobs, especially if you're selling a solution to a buyer who hasn't necessarily been involved in buying before, or to an organization who hasn't bought a solution like yours before, is you have to educate that champion, that executive decision maker on how to do business with you as an organization. And you need to understand how they do business. And if you're not getting alignment with them, if they're not able to tell you how they do business, then I think you quickly know that you don't have someone that can help you move your deal forward. So past the close are super important. And this is a pivotal part of every sales rep's job, is this qualification of how do we become partners?
Yeah. And so as a leader then, Kevin, how are you unpacking that path to close? How are you inspecting it?
Yeah, one of the things we do at Clari on every opportunity at the sales stage 2 and beyond. So for us, the sales stage 2 is, we're investing in it. We do what we call a sequence of events review. So the sales rep will create the sequence of events. They will get buy-in with their customer, or as close as they can, depending on where they are in the sales cycle. And then that rep and that manager will review that sequence of events week over week. And obviously the goal is that that is tightening up, that we're seeing progress toward a committed date. When we get into end of quarter at Clari, we actually bring all the reps together and we do a sequence of events call every day. And we do a skip level. So I'm on it with the managers and their managers. And as an organization, we're all invested in the common outcome of this opportunity. And the goal is that, look, you don't see everything, right? And as you're in that process to close, sometimes, and I think Jake mentioned this, nobody wins alone, so you need to share the risk as a rep. So there are things in that sequence of events that a rep just can't do, right? Maybe it's EB alignment. Maybe you need head of sales alignment with their CIO. Maybe you need CFO and CFO alignment. All those things come out in the sequence of events. And obviously, as you're marching toward your end of quarter or whatever your close date is with that customer, you want to know that these things are moving forward. So a big part of how we look at each opportunity is, are we progressing the opportunity through the close process with the customer?
Yeah, that's great. So once there is an agreed upon path to close, that's when you're getting basically a committee together with multiple stakeholders from different business units to get behind the seller and share the risk. I like that. Jake, do you do a similar thing? Or how do what's kind of the next steps when there's agreed upon path to close?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Understand the buying process, and we call them a mutual action plan over here, is absolutely mission critical. The key thing is mutual, as Kevin mentioned. I've had many times when I've been pressure testing a deal, an AE will pop open their mutual action plan or their close plan, and it will be perfect. It's going to have every step in the process, and then I'll ask the question, have you shared this with the customer? And the answer is no. A mutual action plan is pretty much worthless if it hasn't been shared with the customer and the customer hasn't agreed upon it. The other important thing is, a lot of times, the customer who you're working with is maybe purchased software for their company maybe one other time, right? Or maybe 0 times. It's very rare that people are actually a buyer of software. And a lot of times they don't know their own process. The majority of times that I see a deal slip out of the quarter at the last minute is because they were blindsided by a step in the process. And a lot of times it wasn't the rep not understanding it, it was the person buying the software didn't understand it. And you would be surprised, even the most senior executives get blindsided. I've had many times when I've been called in last minute to go rescue a deal, and I get on the phone and the person said, we missed this one process. If I just would have known, a week earlier, we would have had plenty of time. So, really understanding what that is critical. But also, really understanding, have you established the value, right? The economic reason for the customer to buy your software or your technology. What is the business outcome? Have you justified it? Why are they going to justify spending, whatever amount of, hundred thousands of dollars, et cetera? Are you within the power base? Does this person have the ability to spend? Who's dad? Who do they have to go ask for money? Those are, really critical things to understand beyond just, hey, what are the bread and butter sequence of two events of, what most procurement processes have, right? So again, who's the economic buyer? Have you established value? Do you have a sponsor? And then have you really outlined and understand, the entire procurement process are pretty critical.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that'll kind of naturally lead us to number 4, and you had a ton of great points there, and it reminds me of that. I think it's a Sandler question, and it's when is the last time that you made a purchase like this, and can you walk me through what that process looked like? And that can sometimes really help you up front to get that mutual action plan together and get a little bit more visibility. So let's move on to number 4 now, and this one is very much what we're just talking about. This is no connection to the power base. So maybe you have not identified enough of the players involved. So Jake, let's quickly just identify who is the power base. What does that mean?
In the most basic terms, who has the political capital and ability within an organization and the power to purchase software or to make a substantial investment in a piece of technology or whatever you're selling. Key thing here is title does not necessarily mean power. Most AEs, especially people earlier in their sales career, associate title with power. That is the farthest thing from the truth. I've met very powerful CIOs. I've met CIOs that are retired in chair, or frankly, they don't have any ability to spend and they don't have any budget, right? I've met, C-suite executives, SVPs, that cannot purchase. And then I've also at the same time been down at a director level or maybe a VP level where they're running an incredibly powerful program or an initiative, and they can yield a ton of power and can buy a lot of software from you and have a very high ability to spend.
Excellent point. Excellent point. I love that. I think it is something that you learn as your career progresses, is that piece that title is not everything. And that's what can make it so tricky. So Kevin, do you have any tips, tricks, tactics on how to actually go about identifying the power base? Because it can be very tricky sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to test for power base. And, I think we've said this a few times during the conversation. Title doesn't necessarily equate to power. And title might also just not care or have the mental capacity to want to deal with what you're selling and delegate it. So it's really important to test in each opportunity who the power base is and who's going to help you unlock the opportunity. And this is questioning at the sales rep level, and this is also spreading the risk, right? By that sales rep not being afraid to bring in other constituents from their company, their manager, their executive, whoever it is, to help test that we're dealing with someone that knows how to do business. And so I think you had said the Sandler methodology before, right? Does this customer know how to purchase within the organization? Do they know what a procurement process looks like? How does the company make a decision on budgeting something that is not in the budget, right? I think that's something as sales reps we've all hit in our careers is we're selling something, we got people really interested, but it's not on the budget for this fiscal year. How do they unlock it? What kind of decisions are they going to have to make internally, right? So here you're really going to find someone that can be a champion and executive buyers. Do they know how to go to an organization and to go fight for funds that may not exist, which typically means cutting of something else? And they've got to be in a big enough position of power or the ability to influence and convince to make that shift in investment. And so it really is testing at all levels. I think you need to understand how your folks that you're trying to sell to, how are they motivated? Like, how are they comped? What are the metrics they're tied to? And if you can figure out what strategic growth initiative in the company their comp plan is tied to and how your solution is going to help them meet their goal, then you're going to figure out who's an executive buyer that can help you move your deal forward. Right. So I think the other thing you can do is ask for something major in the process. And if they're a player, they'll make it happen. So depending on what solution or service you're providing, ask for something big during the sales cycle and see if they can make it happen. And if they do, you have someone who's got some power.
That's a great tactical tip to make happen. Totally. If they can't do a small ask, how are they going to, get this deal done for you? I like that one. Okay, so as we move on, we'll hit our number 5, and then we'll go into some Q&A. And these ones are very much aligned in my eyes, right? We've got this power base. Maybe you've done a really good job, and you're like, no, I know this is the guy, this is the gal. She's going to bring it home for me, but you're only talking to one person. This is when it can get scary. And this is kind of full circle to those happy years, at the beginning when you're like, no, this is it. This is my guy, my gal. She's my champion. She's going to get it done. She's told me all this. But you're only talking to one person. Got to be one of the biggest red flags out there. Why is it so important not to have a deal that is single-threaded? And can you guys just give us a few examples maybe of times you've seen this just absolutely blow up? Because I don't think it can be understated how important it is. And Jake, I'll start with you here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartely agree. If I find out a deal is single-threaded, I immediately just assume that deal's not going to happen, right? That we're going to be blindsided. If you allow yourself to become single-threaded, it's the most risky thing you can do as a seller. Because a lot of times it just sets you up for being blindsided. And a lot of times when you allow yourself to be single-threaded, you have not validated, is this person in the power base? 2, right? Does this person have the juice to get it done? Are they working on a science experiment? And a lot of times if you're single-threaded, it's because that person does not allow you to get outside of them, and that should have your paranoia radar go off, right? So most likely means they might not have the ability to get it done for you, and they probably really don't understand what that process is. And frankly, you could have been working on a science experiment for the last few weeks, months, and quarters. So triangulate, validate, is the most important thing you can do. You could trust somebody, but you better verify it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything there. And the scary part is sometimes they think they're a part of the power base. So they're not trying to deceive you or anything. In their mind, it's getting done just as much as you think it's getting done, but they don't have the levers to pull. So Jake, I'll go back to you on this one. How do I tactfully work around that without my champion coming back and being like, Scott, what the heck, man? We were doing this together, and now you just overstepped me.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tough question. Frankly, sometimes you got to take a risk and do it. Sometimes you need to explain to your champion why you need to go validate and how getting more people in the boat will help them de-risk their program, right, for them. You always want to make it, hey, how you're trying to help them. Sometimes you want to have someone else from your go-to-market team reach out, right, and try and validate. There's a whole host of things you need to do. But ultimately, you're going to have to sometimes take a risk in a deal and try and figure out how to tactfully go around. And there really isn't one easy answer. It is really, situational. I always will say if someone's telling you that they have the power to get something done, right, a lot of times they don't, right? If they feel they need to tell you that, that means there's some level of insecurity, or they're not in the power base, or something's happened where they feel they need to clearly tell you that means they probably don't have the juice to get it done for you. So, a lot of different ways. You can also have a partner reach out as well, but, there's a whole host of ways you do triangulate. And, and sometimes, it might blow up. Deals ultimately get done when there's tension, right? And there's conflict and contact, right? I always say, hey, has the deal blown up yet? Has there been contact from a relationship standpoint? If the rep says no, then I said, okay, this thing's not ready to close.
I like that. And Kevin, I would love your perspective, but maybe put like your buyer hat on, and how have you seen it done tactfully to you? Because I'm sure people reach out to you all the time, be like, hey, I'm talking to your manager about X, and how are you most likely to respond favorably?
Yeah, that's a great point, right? In my role at Clari, we look at a lot of solutions and technologies that help us through top of funnel, middle of funnel, et cetera. And quite honestly, in my role, we're charging hard on hiring, onboarding, running opportunities, and continue to expand, and that takes up a lot of my time. And so I really look to my key stakeholders on my team to make recommendations to me, and I also empower them to make good decisions. And then I'll go fight the internal battles when something makes sense for our business, on funding, et cetera. So back to our earlier question, right? It's not just that you've got access to the title, but you have access to the people that are a part of that organization, that are the influencers, that are the trusted advisors to that C-level person. And look, I've seen this at my role at Clari. I've seen this at roles where I've led sales organizations in really big companies, and as an individual contributor. And I can tell you, I've learned my lesson on being single-threaded. I'll go back to an opportunity I had in my early career at SAP where I chased this customer to the end of the earth because I had to. And at the end of the day, I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? I thought to myself, I've done everything. I wrote down everything I did, from demos to inspections to references to engagement. And I went to the other stakeholders in that organization that were outside of the IT world. I said, we've done all of this. What else is left to do? Don't you think it's time to move forward and stop wasting all of our time? And so if I go forward into a leadership role I had, like competing against the leader in the HCM space, every CRO on earth, CHRO on earth had already made a decision on what HR solution they wanted. What I told my team is okay, there's three key stakeholders in this opportunity. You have a CIO, you have a CFO, and you have a CHRO or head of HR. You got to get me two of those three, and we got a pretty good chance of winning. You get all three, it's a home run, but you only get one, we lose. And most often, we would not win the key buyer. And so it's a lot of hard work, but you need to be able to get to other constituents in an organization to be able to move your agenda forward, because I'll tell you, your competitors are doing it. So went a little bit off this question there, but I wanted to make sure I shared that.
No, I love it. That was great insight. Okay, so last question I want to ask, and then we'll get to a lot of great questions. Thank you, everyone, for the engagement. So we covered a lot here today. Jake, if people walk away remembering three things from this presentation today, what would you want those to be?
Get everybody in the boat with you. Really embrace, your leaders or your peers pressure testing your deals. Always be skeptical, trust but verify, triangulate, don't be single-threaded.
I love it. And this question here, is a deal ever really dead in your eyes?
Never. You could always recover a deal. I could even give you a specific example. I had a very large transaction that I was working on, and ultimately our executive sponsor was the CFO, and he was asked to leave the company, and we thought our deal was completely dead, and ultimately we closed it 2 weeks later. And this was after them saying, hey, look, sorry he left, this was his initiative, et cetera. I think there's many cases when you think a deal died and it comes back. Every really good deal dies at least twice before you win it, right? It's not if, it's when, and I always look for that to happen before you could actually get it done.
I love that quote. Every good deal dies twice before it closes. That should be on a big plaque somewhere. I love that. Kevin, same question to you. If people walk away with three things from today's presentation, what would you like those to be? And then follow up, is a deal ever really dead in your eyes?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what Jake called, be the GM of your business. I call it, run your franchise. You signed up for it. Your job is to put the resources of the company to best work in your business and lead that collective organization to your vision for that franchise. You think about it as a franchise, as a GM, you will succeed. Two, I think you need to be curious. Curious means asking a lot of questions, understanding what are the strategic growth initiatives of that company? How is your solution going to impact it? How is your solution going to help the person that you're trying to get to be your champion? And curiosity is going to lead you down the path to understand how this company purchases, how this company makes decisions. And I'll tell you what, you'll earn the respect of your customer if you ask really good questions, because in a lot of cases, they may not have thought of it. And then three, I think you got to be tenacious. You have to continue to drive. You can't give up. I'll tell something about my partner here, Jake. And when I met him, this guy never gave up. This guy worked hard. This guy got to everybody he needed to get to, both internally and with the customer. So tenacity for me is super important when I look to hire folks. And then is a deal ever really dead? I'll tell you, I agree with Jake in that the biggest deals that I've ever done in my career, those that I thought, that other people thought might not have gotten done are the ones that got done. And there's things that you need to do when the deal is dying that you can do to resurrect it. We can get into that on another topic on a future sales hacker. But, I'm reminded of a different opportunity, different events in my career, but I want to share one that Jake and I were involved in because it's still something that I think about every day. A large global automotive company whose everyone outside of finance did not want to do business with us at SAP. They wanted to go a different direction. And the decision-making team that they put in front of us did not trust us, did not want to do business with us. And every meeting we got farther away from moving forward versus making progress. And I'll never forget this meeting Jake and I had in this room with this collection of 5 key stakeholders. It was, everyone's collar was up, the heat was hot. And we just took a different approach and said, you know what? We've all had our force fields up in this room. You don't trust us and we don't trust you. So let's start from a point of honesty and work forward. And we slowly earned each other's respect to the point where we became a team negotiating against our own company. So think about what you can do to earn the trust and respect of your customer, and that's going to help unlock a deal.
I love that story. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, just getting rid of those, invisible barriers, force fields, whatever it is. Like that's ultimately your job as a sales leader, sales rep, and sometimes it just takes saying that out loud, which is really cool. Okay, we probably have time for one question, maybe two. We'll see how quickly we can go here. Here's one I really like. This is going back to what we said earlier, Kevin, it was you trying to gauge someone's level of influence by asking something big of them before you ask for the close. Do you have an example, either Kevin or Jake, of something that you can ask your champion to kind of gauge their level of influence at an organization?
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, one that's always interesting is, hey, we're going to invest a lot of time and money together. It probably makes sense for us to have executive alignment. Can I get just make a CEO to meet with your CEO to clear the airwaves so that we can move forward? So a big executive meeting is always a good task. Another is access to Powerbase to do discovery. Hey, we don't know enough about you. We have made assumptions on our side. We'd like to validate these assumptions with these 3 key stakeholders. Can you give me access to them? So it's those kind of, I think, asks of your customer to show that you're committed to see if they are.
That's great. Anything to add there, Jake? Any other asks that you've used that have been helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will echo what Kevin said. Can they get you access to other folks? Can they, mobilize different groups of people and, get workshops scheduled for you? Do they fully understand, what is the budgeting process? Do they have signing authority? I think there's a whole host of questions that you can ask to see, hey, does this person have juice? But ultimately, it's, do they have the ability to move the process along, right? And it's always a series of tests, right? You need to test them, right? Can they actually get you somewhere that you couldn't get on your own. And, that can quickly identify, if the power person is in the power base. I will say to all the sellers that are out there, the most common mistake an AE makes is they just simply forget to ask, right? They don't ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask for the meeting, to talk to the boss's boss, right? But always just come up with a good reason and talk track on why that ask makes sense and how the person you're working with, it's going to ultimately benefit them.
I love it. And I think that's a great place to wrap up. Is don't be afraid to ask those tough questions. I love it. Well, Jake, Kevin, thank you so much for hanging out with us. That takes us to the hour. I know you're both very busy guys. So thank you for the time. And if people want to connect with you, keep this conversation flowing, what's the best way to reach out? Are you guys on LinkedIn, Twitter?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and my email at Clari is kevink@Clari.
Awesome.
Yep, LinkedIn as well, and the email is jmars@alteryx.com.
Amazing. All right, thank you. And for everyone who joined us, thank you so much. And thank you for putting up with that audio feedback at the beginning. Thanks for the great questions. Go and close the quarter strong.